Richard Lucian Page was a United States Navy officer who joined the Confederate States Navy and later became a brigadier general in the Confederate States Army during the American Civil War. Early life. Richard L. Page was born in Clark County, Virginia on December 20, 1807 to William Byrd Page and Ann Page. He has a maternal cousin in the future Confederate full General Robert E. Lee and a paternal cousin in the poet Thomas Nelson Page. Another maternal relative is Charles Lee, who was U.S. Attorney General during the Washington administration and the John Adams administration. He attended the common schools in Clark County and in Alexandria, Virginia. Early military service. Richard Lucian Page joined the U.S. Navy as a midshipman on March 12, 1824, and his first assignment in 1824 to 1825 was on board the U.S. John Adams of the U.S. Navy West Indies Squadron led by Commodore David Porter. In 1825, he was ordered to the U.S. Brandywine and was with the crew when it carried General Marquis de Lafayette back to France under the leadership of U.S. Navy Captain Charles Morris. Now in Europe, Midshipman Page was transferred to the U.S. Constitution, where he served with this U.S. Navy Mediterranean Squadron ship until it returned to the port of Boston, Massachusetts on Independence Day, 1828. Page's next assignment came on the U.S. Constellation, after which he prepared for his naval examination. In 1830 to 1834, past midshipman and sailing master Richard Page served on board the U.S. Concord with the U.S. Navy Mediterranean Squadron. On March 26, 1834, Richard Page was commissioned a U.S. Navy lieutenant and was ordered to serve on the U.S. Enterprise, which was going overseas. He was then transferred to the U.S. Ontario, then transferred back to the U.S. Enterprise, and then finally landing on the U.S. Peacock, which brought him back to the United States of America in October 1837 after this around-the-world tour of duty. Lieutenant Page was then given a 2 years leave of absence to visit Europe in 1837 to 1839. Upon returning to duty in 1839, Page will serve at the Norfolk Navy Yard as an ordnance officer. It was while he was stationed at Norfolk at this time that he married a local woman, Alexina Taylor, in 1841. They will have 4 children. After duty at the Navy shipyard, he then takes to the seas again on board the U.S. Macedonian for 2 years. In 1844 to 1845, he will be back with the U.S. Navy Mediterranean Squadron on board the U.S. Fairfield. Upon returning to the United States in 1845, he served with the Doctus Pennsylvania at the U.S. Navy Norfolk Naval Shipyard, the Mexican-American War and afterwards. During the Mexican-American War of 1846 to 1848, he served for 2 years as lieutenant commander on board the U.S. Independence. This ship served as the flagship for U.S. Navy Pacific Squadron Commander Commodore William Shubrick. After this war, in 1849 to 1852, he was back doing ordnance duty at the U.S. Navy Norfolk Navy Shipyard. Then in 1852 to 1854, Lieutenant Commander Page served as commander of the U.S. Pearly with the U.S. Navy Africa Squadron. Upon returning from Africa, Page was back at the U.S. Navy Norfolk Navy Shipyard, this time as an executive officer and a member of the retiring board. On September 14, 1855, U.S. Navy Lieutenant Commander Richard Page was promoted to commander in the midst of his 1854 to 1857 service while at Norfolk, Virginia. In 1857 to 1859, Commander Page was with the U.S. Navy East India Squadron serving as commander of the U.S. Germantown. Then he returned to Norfolk, where he will serve in 1859 to 1861. As soon as the state of Virginia seceded from the Union, U.S. Navy Commander Richard Lucian Page resigned his rank in office while at the Norfolk shipyard. With the Confederates now out of the U.S. Navy, Richard L. Page next served as a naval aide-de-camp to the Governor of Virginia John Letcher with special duties to organize a state of Virginia Navy. While in this office, Page supervised the building of fortifications at the mouth of the James River as well as those on the Nansemond River and on the Pagan River. On June 10, 1861, Richard Page received a commission as a Confederate States of America Navy commander. Prior to the evacuation at Norfolk, Virginia, he served at the shipyard. Upon being promoted to C.S. Navy captain a short time later, Page went on to establish the Ordnance and Construction Depot located at Charlotte, North Carolina, which he will largely manage during the period of 1861 to 1864. During this time of 1861 to 1864, however, he will also briefly be in command of C.S. Navy forces at Savannah, Georgia, and will also be active in the Battle of Port Royal in November 1861, where he served on the CSS Savannah under the fleet command of C.S. Navy Squadron Flag Officer Josiah Tatnall. Then on March 1, 1864, Richard Page leaves the CS Navy to join the CS Army. He gets a commission as a CS Army Brigadier General. He is then assigned to take command of the outer defenses of the CS Army held location at Mobile Bay, Alabama, and would set up his headquarters at Fort Morgan. Brigadier General Page was in command of the Confederate garrison that controlled Fort Morgan, Alabama, during the Union's attacks on Mobile Bay. Fort Morgan withheld the Union attack on April 5, 1864, but was besieged on April 9. Then on August 8, 1864, a 10,000 men and 200 cannon Union task force arrived to challenge Page's 400 men and 26 cannon Confederate force. Union task force staff summoned Page and told him to surrender. He replied that he would defend the fort to the end. Federal troops then moved the works closer to the outdated fort for the next 2 weeks. Then on August 22, 1864, heavy Union cannon fire replaced the lighter cannon fire of the previous 2 weeks. For the next 12 hours, 3,000 Union cannon shells were thrown at the fort. This Union cannon fire started some fires in the fort and threatened to ignite the Confederate powder magazine, and so the defenders put the powder kegs in the cisterns. On August 23, Brigadier General Richard Lucian Page unconditionally surrendered the fort because his troops had little usable gunpowder. Indignant, he broke his sword over his knee instead of surrendering his sword to the Federals. Page's situation was further worsened when he was suspected of destroying munitions and works within the fort after he had agreed to surrender. For this he was arrested by the federal authorities and imprisoned until September 1865, once he had personally surrendered. One of the references listed below, Clement A. Evans, himself a former C.S. Army Brigadier General, was moved to write the following on the defense of Fort Morgan in August 22-23 of 1864. The defense of Fort Morgan, under the command of General Page, is one of the most celebrated instances of heroism in the history of the war. Late life. Richard Lucian Page died in Blue Ridge Summit, Pennsylvania on August 9, 1901 and is buried in Cedar Hill Cemetery, Norfolk, Virginia. Namesake. The U.S. Richard L. Page, a Brooke-class frigate in the United States Navy built in 1965, was named in his honor.